my life unfortunately was put in danger. Yeah. I don't even know how to go about that. Hey everybody, welcome back to my channel. I'm coming in from sunny Mexico. Or rather, I wish I was coming from sunny Mexico. I'm actually in Canada. And if you're new to my channel, welcome. Thank you so much for tuning in. Make sure you subscribe if you're not yet subscribed. I'm actually back in Canada. I was living in Mexico. Sorry, let me just put on my sweater really quick so I can, be properly acclimatized for Canadian winters. My name is Hannah. So yeah, essentially I was living on the beach down in Mexico for the past year. And now I'm living at home in my hometown in my aunt and uncle's basement suite, which is quite a change from living in Mexico. In my previous videos, in one video in particular, I got super emotional and talking about how much I love Mexico. So make sure you guys check that out because Mexico is an amazing place to go check out. Obviously, the world is on hold right now because of the pandemic. Yeah, so why was I working online, living in Mexico, doing my dream life, the kind of thing? And then why am I back in the basement in Canada where it's dark from 4 p.m. until 8 a.m. I don't really know how to go about this, just because I know that there's been a lot of people who've reached out to me and wanting to know about exactly what I've been through and why I'm back in Canada. But yeah, I guess essentially I was able to work online in Mexico, and then I also stayed in Mexico for so long because I got into a relationship, and that relationship also was really hard. And there was red flags from the beginning that I ignored, and let me just start from how I ended up in Mexico, and then I'll talk about how I ended up back in my parents' basement. Well, not my parents, my aunt and my uncle. I had been dealing with some pretty pretty intense disordered eating tendencies. I was going through a bulimic episode, which is really hard for, obviously anybody who knows what it's like to have an eating disorder. It's not fun. And, I was in a really bad place, and I'd reached out to my doctor and let her know that I needed help, and I was admitted to a recovery clinic. But then there was some issues with my living arrangement, and essentially I was asked to leave where I was living because I was too heavy of a person to be around, which obviously is really hard to hear when you're wishing that you're invisible and that you're not taking up space, and then being told that you're too hard to be around was really hard. So I didn't know what to do, and so my coping mechanism was always to run away. So which isn't necessarily a bad coping skill. I've been able to travel the world because I've always gone traveling whenever I feel lost, which is ironic. But yeah, anyways, I ended up going to Mexico, and I have lots of videos talking about how I made it work. I'll link one of them here for you that you guys can go check out if you want. Once the pandemic is done and we can start traveling again, you can go ahead and start living your dream life, because that's what this channel is all about. But yeah, I got to Mexico, and it was essentially you have to make it or break it. I didn't stay in Canada because I wasn't in a place to hold a job because of my disordered eating and obsessive exercise routines, and which I understand is a super privileged issue, but it's nonetheless an issue that lots of people have to go through, and that doesn't make it any less valid. So just don't feel guilty if you're going through that kind of thing too. Yeah, anyway, so I got my job to work online, which was great. I was working as a freelancer, and then I was in a place where I was, you know, eating somewhat normally in comparison to what I was doing. And if you're dealing with that, I highly suggest you reach out to your doctor or tell somebody who you can trust to some capacity. I ended up just like meeting new people, and this one guy and I really clicked, and I didn't think too much about it, but then he kind of let me know that like he loved me and that he wanted to like be with me forever. And it was kind of like the first time where I felt chosen, and where I was in a place to actually receive being chosen. And that's just because my body was really skinny, and I was at the skinniest, or as in like I was finally no longer fat, which obviously I never was, but obviously with an eating disorder and then body dysmorphia, it's really hard to see that. Anyway, so essentially what happened was the relationship progressed, and there was lots of red flags that I skipped and ignored. And then for a really long time, I, you know, took it upon myself to be a better person rather than, and like think about how I was the problem rather than how there is issues going on in the relationship. And like not just me, like a relationship are two people, and one person is never responsible for all of the issues. Eventually I ended up getting into alternate day fasting, and I alternate day fasted and like did week-long fasts for like over a 2-month period, or like a 30-day period, something like that, 6 weeks. And that was like my greatest joy, because it was my outlet for finding joy in life. Like the pandemic was going on, that was really hard to adjust to. I was alone in Mexico, and my ex-partner, was really against social media. He would say things like, it brainwashes you, which was a red flag that I ignored. Didn't like how if I watched an episode of Friends and then if I acted out of line, that like I was being negatively influenced. Anyways, so it got to a point where throughout the alternate day fasting, I was really excited because I was getting really skinny, and I was finally in a place where I didn't think about food all the time, which is kind of ironic because you would think that only eating every other day would be something that would make you want to eat a lot. But for me, that wasn't the case. I felt such peace because I didn't have to do anything on the days I wasn't eating. I just had to lay in bed and relax and not do anything. I didn't have to like do my domestic duties, which was another red flag. And there was actually a clip in one of the videos that I'll pop up for you guys so you can see. But essentially in this clip here, I was really proud of my videos. I love YouTube so much. I really love it. And I showed my ex this video, and he got really upset because my body was for his eyes only, apparently. And I was dressing promiscuously and that I belong in the sex working industry. Which, I mean, if you choose to go into the sex industry, that's fine. But me being told that what I was doing was like for that was just preposterous. It was totally incorrect. And yeah, I got to the point where I was like, hey, I can't do this. Like, this isn't fair. I'm an individual, and like if you're hit, yeah. So anyways, I came back to Canada. Then I went back to him, and then a whole other thing happened, and it actually got to become, and we were in Canada, and then we went back to Mexico, which you should have never left for my hometown in the first place. Yeah, I went back to Mexico, and then, yeah, things got a lot worse, a lot more dangerous, and my life, unfortunately, was put in danger from my ex, and I don't even know how to go about that. But I'll just talk about it. I guess the first time that I came back from Mexico, I was quarantined for 2 weeks by the government here in Canada, which was nice, ironically, because I didn't have anywhere to quarantine for the mandatory 2-week quarantine, because that's what the rule is in Canada. Anybody entering into the country has to quarantine for 14 days. Maybe now it's 10 days. And I didn't have anywhere to go because I had cut out everybody in my life as a result of that relationship that I had been in. Yeah, I spent 2 weeks in quarantine, and it was really enlightening because I kind of realized on the flight, but I'd left Mexico and left my ex because I felt trapped. I felt like I couldn't be myself and I couldn't be an individual. So those 2 weeks in quarantine were really powerful because I, at that time, thought that I had lost everything because I was in a relationship that was all consuming. I journaled a lot and I watched lots of lectures because I'm a bit of a nerd, so I was watching like university lectures on psychology and philosophy and stuff. And I realized that I have a really hard time like trusting people and trusting myself and being in relationships with anybody, my family, friends, partners, because I couldn't be in a relationship with myself just because I hated myself, like at a really complex level that is really hard to explain, but like that self-hate really manifested in, you know, disordered eating, and like bulimia was, yeah, the epitome of it. Because I thought that my ex was my world, and because I realized how much hate I had for myself, I thought I contextualized that as, wow, he really does love me because he showed me how messed up I am, apparently. So I went back to him. I had my 2 weeks of quarantine and a couple weeks with my family that I then mended those relationships. I was like, hey, I had these really powerful 2 weeks in isolation enforced by the government. I'm really sorry for cutting you out and being abrasive and kind of being really triggered really easily. I need you to know that I struggle with self-acceptance and self-love, and it manifests as a eating disorder for me. And I'm really sorry that I take out this on you. So tell people that if you feel like you do the same thing, if you have disordered eating tendencies. But then, yeah, I went back to the ex and met his family, and then he had gone back to Canada too after I had left him. And so I went to Vancouver, he went to Toronto. So I went over to Toronto. I don't know, we just both worked online and we both wanted to get back to Mexico because Mexico's amazing. Thank you, Mexico. Before we left, I really realized that I needed to get out of the relationship. Unfortunately, he snapped, and I don't want to get into the details because his story is his own and it's not my responsibility to talk about it, but essentially there was a hospitalization for his mental health, which was not handled properly, unfortunately, and I'm really disappointed in the Canadian healthcare system, letting someone who needs resources and was just released. You know, yeah. He proposed to me, and I remember him pulling out the ring and proposing and being shocked and feeling like I couldn't have say anything else. So I said yes, which is not the way that you're supposed to accept a proposal. Definitely don't do that. And then he physically abused me, which was really the cherry on top, because like the mental and emotional abuse had been happening for months. And then I remember it happening, and I Googled after. I flipping Googled what is physical abuse after he did it. Because it's like, did that just happen? And I remember being in shock. I was crying, I was scared, and I was in shock. And he told me that I had misbehaved, that I am not allowed to disrespect him. And by no means was I perfect, but it doesn't matter how imperfect you are. You never deserve it. And then I remember thinking, you need to pack your bags and go home. You need to get out of here. And I didn't. I Googled it and I was like, okay, yeah, I was physically abused, but I did act out of line. I shouldn't have done that. I know he loves me. I know he cares about me. I know he didn't mean it. So I went down, I think like just a few days later, I went back to Mexico with him. And we got into an apartment that we had signed a lease for. And unfortunately, within less than a week, he required another hospitalization. And it was the most horrifying week of my life. Essentially, we had to make an emergency trip back to Canada in order to get him into the hospital, and first so he could have actual proper care, because he wouldn't be able to. In Canada, you can call the police and they can help you and they can take you to the hospital. In Mexico, though, that's not what's going to happen. And I had to, pack up everything in silence and like hide the fact that we were leaving because I didn't want to make him mad. And I had to secretly put our things in different suitcases because I would pack everything, part of my domestic role. And then, anyways, had a very painful flight from Mexico back to Toronto. And thank God I asked for help. I asked for help on all of the flights. I flew with American Airlines. Thank you, American Airlines. I told the flight attendants that I needed help. I filled them in on what was going on, and they were so helpful. They had escorts for us. And then finally got back to Canada, and from the airport back to his family's house in Toronto, he was driving, which was the biggest mistake in the world, and I tried to get myself to drive, but his mom said no, she was going to drive, and then he was upset and said he would drive, which is the worst thing. So stupid. This was such a turning point in my life to realize how bad my decisions were to get me to that point, because on that drive home, it was like getting into a car with a drunk driver. And like, as soon as he got into the driver's seat, I was in the back seat and I told his mom, I was like, this isn't okay, that he cannot be driving. It's fine, Hannah. It's fine. You need to be stronger. They kept telling me that. You need to be stronger. It's fine, Hannah. Don't be so mean to him. And I believed it. It was so ridiculous. And then in the drive home, we were driving in the highway, on the freeway in frickin' Toronto. Like, that's like the New York of Canada. So the highways are big. They're busy. And I remember him driving and like in the middle of the freeway slamming on the brakes and just stopping. And then like that's just asking for a disaster waiting to happen. Or like there was closed off ramp areas where construction workers are, and he would try to drive up the ramps and try to drive like into the construction machines, and it was horrible. And then he would like deliberately like whip over like 3 lanes and go right beside another car and like look in and stare at them, and like just horribly reckless driving. And I remember being so scared, and I said, please pull over, please pull over, please pull over, just let me out, just let me out, just let me out. And I didn't care. I didn't care about my stuff. I didn't care about anything. I just wanted out of the car. And then finally his mom, because he in this state, he hated me. He thought I was this terrible person, and he would get very mad at me. So he would ignore me. He ignored me completely. And his mom was finally like, okay, you can pull over now. Like, let her out. And so he pulled over, and I was like, thank God. And I opened up the car door and I went to get out. And as I was stepping out of the vehicle, he slammed on the gas and like took off. And thankfully, I was able to get myself back into the car and I closed the door. And I remember I screamed and I was crying. And I remember his mom was yelling at him. And she turned around and told me that I needed to be quiet because he's going to kill us. And then that's when I realized that you really suck at taking care of yourself, Hannah. Because if you stopped ignoring all of the warning signs, and if you had the courage to the recording stopped. I reached the max time. But yeah, I realized that if I had like the courage to walk away from something that I knew was bad, even though I didn't fully understand it, then I wouldn't have been in such a dangerous situation. And his driving remained reckless. It remained speeding, slamming on brakes, swerving towards cars, nearly hitting them, staring other drivers down. And I remember after his mom told me to be quiet, I realized that the more scared I was and the more fear that I had, the more reckless he became, the more it enticed him, if you will. So I just remember sitting in the back seat and I was like, if you die, this is your fault. Like I had been prepping like on the entire like 12-hour journey back to Canada with layovers and stuff that I was going to leave him at the airport, give back the engagement ring, and just walk away. And then his mom asked me to come back to the house. I don't know, and I said yes. And yeah, it's the stupidest thing I've ever done, getting in that car. But also miraculously, I made it. We didn't get in an accident. We didn't get hit. We didn't hit anybody. We didn't go flying off the road. And yeah, I grew up super religious, and well, I didn't grow up super religious. My dad was, and I hadn't prayed in years. And then, of course, during that drive home, after I realized that I could be moments from death, I was praying, asking like, Dad, if you're there, because my dad passed away. I was like, please don't let this be the reason why I passed. Please don't let my idiocy take my life. Yeah. Got back to the house, and on the way there, even though I didn't know if I was going to make it there alive, I booked a hotel. I ordered an Uber, and as soon as we got there, I was like, grab my stuff. I was like, good luck. Here's the ring. He ran away, gave it all to his mom, and hopped on a plane and came back to my hometown. That's how I ended up in the basement. And as terrible as that situation was, I am so grateful. I'm so grateful for my year in Mexico. And that relationship, because I now know like how to deal with my eating disorder better. I got a therapist. I rekindled things with my family. I found forgiveness in myself and in others. And really taken responsibility for how my life goes. And I think this story is important for anybody who is in an unhealthy, restrictive, controlling, extreme relationship with themselves, their food perhaps, maybe drinking, or in a relationship with somebody else. Because, crazy things happen when you put your health and well-being on the back burner. So, anyways, this experience taught me a lot, and that's how I started my company, Hannah Linnea Longevity, and that's why I now work with people in overcoming sabotaging food habits. Yeah, I really appreciate if you stuck around to watch this video, and just know that if you're feeling trapped or if there's a gut feeling that you need to run away, trust it. And when you start doubting yourself, I mean, I'm really proud of myself for giving it a go and being like in doubt. And like when I doubted myself and went back and gave it a go, I'm glad that I did, because now that is completely closed. It'll never happen again. I never have to think about him again. I don't have to worry about any of that kind of stuff. But at the same time, there's a certain level of like faith and trust to have in yourself to make a decision and to stick to it. And I hope that my story helps you gain that confidence that you need to have full and true trust in yourself. So, anyways, that's all that I have for this video. Please make sure that you subscribe to my channel below and give this video a thumbs up if you haven't. Please let me know in the comments if you want to see more videos like this, or if you want to know more about like my eating disorder recovery and finding self-love. Thanks so much, everybody.